Please be seated. We're about to start. Thank you. There's more seats in the front here if you want to come to the front. Thank you very much. Excellencies, honorable speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to APNIC 38, and thank you all for joining us here today. I'm Sunny Chendi from APNIC, and I'll be your MC for this week. I would like to start off by acknowledging the Turrbal people as the traditional owners of the land where we gather today, and recognize that this land has always been under their custodianship. I pay my respect to elders past and present, to emerging communities, leaders, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal people present. We have a wonderful program for you today. We will hear from APNIC Executive Council Chair Maimura Akinori, APNIC Director General Paul Wilson, John Francois Ganmo John from Government of New Caledonia, Philip Giovalino from OPT, and Ivan Fong from PETA. As well, our keynote addresses today, as you know, are keenly anticipating, will be delivered by the Honorable Minister Malcolm Turnbull and Mr. Hollins, our Deputy Secretary General of the ITU. For those of you who wish to, I would encourage you to join the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag APNIC38. To commence official proceedings, I would like to invite songwoman Maruchi Baramba to perform the Welcome to Country.
Balandiko kundulumbuler, Balandiko kundulumbuler, yang indai, yang go, kundai, yang go. Balandiko kundulumbuler, Balandiko kundulumbuler, Balandiko kundulumbuler. Balandiko kundunumbule yang indai yang go kundai yang go. Balandiko kundunumbuler, Balandiko kundunumbuler. Bukhari marumba mianjanu. Let's welcome to Brisbane in the language of the Turrbal people when we do a welcome to country that is done as a blessing of the gathering and song, and I do that in a Tinshiwal, but generally I take full advantage of the opportunity to let the broader community know a little bit about my mob, the original Brisbane people, who were actually documented as being extinct, on the verge of extinction way back in the 1860s, and it's one small family that survived the impact of European settlement upon our ancestral homelands, and we are still here, still practicing our traditional culture in accordance with our laws and customs that date back many, many thousands of years. The Turrbal people would like to extend an appreciation to the organisers of this event today for asking us to be a part of your gathering here. We would like to extend our welcome to everybody, especially all the internationals here, as well as those from somewhere else on the Australian continent. Hope you have a good time today. I'll do the blessing of the gathering. And the song was just singing at Brisbane River Dreaming. Baritha, Muriana men, Manda Baritha, Muriana men, Manda Baritha Murianamen. Manda Baritha Murianamen. Ngodo Payawa Nyin Yung Analo. Manda Baritha Murianamen. Manda Baritha Murianamen. Manda Baritha Murianamen. Manda Baritha Murianamen. Karinyanami chuchamopironu. Karinyanami. Karinyanami chuchamopironu. Karinyanami chuchamopironu.
Thank you, Sangome and Maruchi Baramba, for your blessings and for the welcome to country. I'd now like to invite the Chair of APNIC Executive Council, Maimura Akinori, for his welcome speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunny. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, for the APNIC 38. My name is Maimura Akinori, the chair of the APNIC Executive Council. I'm pleased to see all so many APNIC members and our friends here today, and I'm very happy to see a lot of new faces here in Brisbane. We will have an excellent lineup of programs for the next 5 days, and we will have stellar speakers in this afternoon and throughout this week. I'd like to call your attention to several good sessions on the transitioning to IPv6. In particular, I'd recommend the IPv6 plenary dual on dual stacking tomorrow, where you hear from some of the world's best experts on this topic. Another important session, which will be held on Wednesday, is consultation session, IANA stewardship transition, to discuss the IANA stewardship transition. It was just after we met in Putrajaya last time, Malaysia, in February this year. The United States government announced its intent to transfer the stewardship of IANA function to us, global multi-stakeholder internet community. Since then, there have been a lot of things happened to prepare the constellation of the future framework of the IANA stewardship after NTIA steps down from it. And we are finally starting our discussion in APNIC. It is important that the views of our region are heard in this global process. The Asia-Pacific represents the biggest, the fastest growing, and the most diverse region in the world. Yet in these global discussions on the future of the internet, our voices have been in the minority. I would encourage you to take part and contribute actively to this session. Sessions are great and important, but I am sure those of you who have attended an APNIC conference before know that some of the real value to be here is the chance to meet and share your experience with your peers. Please make full use of the opportunities for networking over coffee breaks, over lunches, and over receptions. The internet is run by us. our strength as the community will strengthen the internet. Before we start in earnest, I'd like to welcome the special guests we have with us in this session. I'd like to welcome and thank the Pacific Island friends here in APNIC 38. In particular, Mr. Jean-François Grandjean from the government of the New Caledonia, and Mr. Philippe Gevolino from OPT, and Ivan Fom, president of PITA, Pacific Islands Telecommunications Associations. Many of you remember APNIC 38 was originally supposed to be presenting this opening ceremony in front of the crystal clear waters of the Numer, New Caledonia. The change of our venue for the APNIC 38 to Brisbane meant that unfortunately we could not hold it in Numer as planned. As some of you remember, APNIC has decided to have the sub-region rotation for its conferences, and APNIC 38 is definitely of the turn of Pacific. Therefore, we love to have the Pacific flavor of the conference. Our team has worked very closely with OPT, the New Caledonian government, and our friend at PITA to make sure this APNIC conference has one of the biggest, if not the biggest, attendance ever from the Pacific Islands, as well as our wealth of the dedicated content. I'm looking forward to hearing Jean-François, Philippe, and Ivan speak in a moment. I'd like to extend the very special welcome to both Honorable Malcolm Turnbull, Australia's Ministers for Communications, and ITU Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Hurin Zhao. Both of these men are now involved in the more political side of our industry, but both gentlemen are no stranger to the technical community. Mr. Zhao started out as a technical engineer in China's Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications. He had had full career in the development of the standards for the ITU in the ITU-T sector. And then, as an elected official in several key posts for this organization. Mr. Zhao is now in the candidacy for the next Secretary General of the ITU, and it will be the big news for us to have the head position of ITU from Asia-Pacific region again. Minister Turnbull was one of the key persons to bring the Australian internet to what it is now. He was the co-founder of the Australia's first large ISP, Oz Email, before he moved into politics. I know both of them are very busy, so it is a great mark of respect for the APNIC community that they have taken time to be here today. Thank you very much, Mr. Zhao and Mr. Turnbull. I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to our sponsors. As you see by the names on the sponsor behind me, we have had a very supportive response from our community. We couldn't make APNIC 38 happen without our sponsors. Our membership comprises many different communities and cultures. We all bring different skills, different knowledge, different experiences. The diversity of our community is one of our greatest strengths. APNIC 38 is all about participation, sharing experiences, and collaborating to harness the diversity. I encourage all of you to make the most of the time here to learn, to network, and to actively participate in as many sessions as possible. To conclude my words, I'd like all participants here in APNIC 38 enjoy the conference, participate, share, and collaborate while you're here, and please don't stop there. When you go back home, continue the sharing the knowledge with your colleagues, get them involved in our community, and helped develop the internet into what we wanted to become. Now, I have the great pleasure as the chair of the Executive Council of APNIC and for the community to declare APNIC 38 open. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kinori, for that warm welcome. I would now like to invite Mr. Jean-Francois Gonmoujon and from the Government of New Caledonia and Mr. Philippe Javolino from OPT to share with us about the digital strategy in New Caledonia.
Thank you. Saying my name in French is a real challenge, so thank you. My name is Jean-François Grandmougin, and I'm advisor of the Minister in charge of digital development in New Caledonia. And you may know Philippe Javolino, who is the Deputy CEO of OPT, our operator. Well, first of all, well, I'm supposed not to read my notes, but sorry, my English is not that good, so I have to read. First of all, on behalf of the government of New Caledonia, I would like to thank the APNIC for a warm welcome in Brisbane. As you know, this meeting was supposed to be held in Noumea, but due to logical and technical issues, we couldn't hold it. So Brisbane is a nice city, we're being the sun, and so, what else? Thanks a lot. New Caledonia's motto is land of speech, land of sharing. Well, that's exactly what we're doing here on APNIC. We are here to share our experience, to talk about our problems, so we can solve it together. Also, the government of New Caledonia is really proud to participate in APNIC 38 and to present what has been built and what will be built on this territory, thanks to our local partners and especially our operator, OPT. Our goal is really to enable our people to be citizens of the digital world. Where is the next slide? I don't know. You know, Philippe? No? Yes. Oops. Well, it was to be not in that position. Anyway, New Caledonia is a rather small French island within the Pacific, and I guess our digital issues are certainly common to other Pacific islands. I don't know if you really see where we are. We are between Australia and Fiji. And, well, you should see also that the surface of New Caledonia is rather than Fiji. So it's a small island, but not that small. And you know, our people in New Caledonia are really involved in digital technology. We have just some numbers. We have 255,000 cell phone lines, and we have 260,000 people living. We have DSL technology, 3G access, and in a few months, thanks to OPT, we will enable to offer 4G. But also, we also have a big social, cultural, economic, and geographical disparities. That's our main issue: fight or avoid digital fracture. Next, ça va être pire. Yes. It's better. Okay, so in fact, we have to find a way to address this challenge. This challenge is to engage New Caledonia in the digital revolution without leaving anyone on the road. That is our main issue. And the government of New Caledonia have, as you can see, for access, a vision with for access. First, develop new business activities, modernize and upgrade our own administration, also set up a fair governance for our digital development, and what we are doing today, share and promote our experience in the Pacific. Je sais pas où elle est. Oh, okay. Yes, it needs times. So, how we did it? Well, the government of New Caledonia decided to have a strong commitment regarding the digital development. Honestly, I really think this is one of the key of success. It's a plan decided by the government, of course, but we didn't want to impose our vision. It had to be a cohesive approach. And as you can see, in fact, these plans have been voted by the Congress of New Caledonia. In New Caledonia, we have 54 congressmen and congresswomen. And I'm very proud to say no one said no. All the congressmen and congresswomen said, okay, for a digital development. So it's a basic, very, very important. Also, we want to have a quite high level of agreement. That's why we put this digital plan in the Congress. Okay, the New Caledonia Digital Plan is, of course, it's a vision, but it's also a concrete roadmap with specific projects. We have 4 key areas with development of infrastructure, digital trust and governance, digital uses, and economic development. In fact, behind our digital plan, there is 33 concrete projects to address this public policy. And we choose to have a priority in health, education, professional training, and e-government. Of course, it costs money, and we have an estimation of 120 million Australian dollars for these plans. Also, we choose to have a board with all the institutional organization in New Caledonia to pilot this plan. But this kind of plan is really not possible if you don't have a strong infrastructure, and of course we have to be helped, and we have to support our operator, which is OPT, and Philippe is going to tell you what he is going to do and what OPT is doing to help this digital plan. Philippe, please.
Merci, Jean-François. Thank you, Jean-François. As Jean-François said, we are the incumbent operator, and our perspective and projects are clearly focused on infrastructure and access. And we've got for that a global strategy to reach what we call very high-speed internet and services in New Caledonia, but also to fight against digital fracture. This plan is based across 4 main projects. The first one is to build a very high-speed mobile network with 4G and LTE. And this mobile network will be launched on the first quarter of next year. And we are going to extend the network to be sure that by the end of next year, beginning of 2016, more than 85% of the population of New Caledonia can have access to 4G. The second project is to build a very high-speed network on fixed line based on FTTH, and we are going to connect the first customers by the end of next year. The target, the challenge is also to switch from copper to fiber in an 8 to 10 years plan, and we've got more than 65,000 customers to switch from copper to fiber. All those 2 projects will bring more and more bandwidth in the network, so we need to strengthen and secure our local backbone. This is absolutely necessary, and we will do it by terrestrial and submarine loop to extend the network. And last but not the least, We need also to secure the link between New Caledonia to the rest of the world. At this time, we've got only one cable that we've launched in 2008. It's called Gondwana, and we absolutely need a second cable going somewhere else, maybe not Australia, maybe New Zealand, maybe Vanuatu, maybe Fiji. We need to think local, and we need to think global also. So this plan is quite ambitious. It's for the 8 to 10 next years, and we will have to spend nearly 300 million Australian dollars to go through it. But we've got the support of everybody, the government, all the ISPs, and all the team that are working on digital in New Caledonia. It's a quite big issue for us. Thank you. To show some concrete action, we'll just look at the first one on the left. You see something with solar panel, a box under the panel, and that's what we use to connect people that are too far from the network to have copper link. We've got more than 1,000 households that are connected like this, and we bring them, for more than 50% of them, internet access with 3G solar system, and we bring them 2 megs to every customer. And with the 4G, we are going to give them maybe 20 megs with this kind of solution. So this is clearly a solution to fight against the digital fracture everywhere you are in New Caledonia.
Thank you, Philip. I really like this slide because it's a kind of summary of what we can do in a small island just like ours. As you can see, the government also involved in e-education. You see what we call the, well, in French it's a white electronic board for children. And also the government offer a discount of 360 Australian dollars to each student of high school who want to buy a PC or a tablet. And also you can see at the right on the top a very, well, it's a great project. It's a kind of robot, a medical robot, just like a small R2D2. It's remote, you know. And you can see on the screen there is a doctor who is not on this island. He's in the capital, in Noumea, and this island, it's called Tiga. It's a very isolated island where only 50 people live there. And I can tell you, it was very pleasant to put this robot because people were very grateful to see what we can do for them. Also, the government showed the example. Actually, when there is a meeting of the government, there's no paper. They only have tablets, and the paper is on the tablet. You see? Okay. Well, I guess this is the end. Thank you. Merci. Oleti. Merci.
Thank you, Jean-Francois and Philippe, for sharing New Caledonia digital strategy. Indeed, it's an interesting presentation. Continuing our focus on the Pacific, now I'd like to invite the President of the Pacific Telecommunications Association, Mr. Ivan Fong.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, on behalf of PETA, the Pacific Islands Telecommunications Association, we'd like to thank APNIC for having us here and inviting us to give a few words on behalf of, I suppose, an update on the items that are happening in the Pacific. And I'd like to also cover some of the key challenges that many of the islands and many of our members are going through. So as you go through this APNIC 38 meeting and you discuss whether there are technical matters around security or policy, at times may be worthwhile to stop it and consider how the Pacific Islands or many of our members can be factored into how things may work with the future of the internet. So very quickly, just about Peter, we have about 32 members in the Pacific Islands. We're a non-profit organization that's chartered to promote the development of telecommunications and ICT in the Pacific. Amongst a few of the things we do are technical trainings. We also facilitate policy sessions for regulators and governments, whole forums where people from different disciplines and different walks of life can come and discuss in a forum that's open issues that are of concern to them. One of the successes we've had at PETA has been the collaboration we've had with APNIC, ICANN, ISOC, and the National Startup Resource Center through the Pacific Network Operators Group. That actually was an informal session that started 10 years ago. It's grown on to quite a successful exercise that's run twice a year now, providing technical training for many of our members and also to the internet communities at large in the Pacific. So one of the challenges from the Pacific and as Mr. Maimura mentioned was getting the Pacific, or in his case was Asia Pacific, but in our case was the voice of the Pacific represented at international forum in terms of development, in this case the development of the internet going forward. One of the challenging things we found was actually getting that voice out in the first place. For example, with APNIC, and I know we've had a few submissions in the policy sessions, but to get the submissions is actually quite hard to get that voice out of the Pacific. I think there's a perception that much of the language, for example, of the policy sessions is quite technical, but it's heartening to know through the other sessions that we've had this morning is it does not need to be so, that our members can simply state what their challenges are, and APNIC and others around the community can gather around to building the support and developing the framework and the wording for how policy submissions are to be made. So from our point of view, that is encouraging to hear, and that is something we can communicate back to our members to actually say the process is not as hard, difficult, or as challenging as you might have initially thought it was. But moving on to the challenges of the Pacific, I can say from the outset roughly, and we've seen the presentations from OPT New Caledonia, which I think happens to be one of the exceptions rather than the norm in the Pacific, is the issues of connectivity and access are still the key challenges in the Pacific. And the geography of where many of our members are, to understand that, covers, I think, an ocean area that's about the size of continental Europe, but it's very little land mass. But when we say it covers the size of Europe, people think in terrestrial terms and think that's not actually that difficult a challenge. Well, maybe not if you could walk on water, I usually say. But it turns out to be very difficult, and submarine cables, for example, are much more difficult deployments than terrestrial systems at the end of the day. But having said that, we see a lot of the future of access and connectivity in the Pacific. As OPT has presented, there are a number of countries now being able to put in submarine cable systems, and they've seen immediate impacts in terms of take-up once the cable has landed to that country. The challenge is not every country in the Pacific economically will be able to justify a cable. So for example, in the case of Tonga, who have launched a cable early this year, that has been done with the assistance of the UN via grant to actually help that go through. The economics of that cable, if it's stacked up, would not actually make sense for Tonga itself to have invested in a cable. And the Tonga case would actually reflect the position of many more of our members at the end of the day. So they do have some challenges. What's encouraging, though, is while the ideal is to get, for example, submarine cable for international connectivity, we're seeing some developments in satellites now, so we're seeing low latency, low Earth orbit satellites coming into play now, so that's adding some extra impetus in terms of development. With that, on the access side to the end user, the last mile, what we're seeing predominantly that will come forward is a number of operators and providers in the Pacific using wireless technologies as deployments for the last mile. And we're seeing now with, for example, LTE and 4G technologies offering equivalent speeds to, for example, ADSL technologies. It obviates the need for many operators and many ISPs now to actually carry on with fixed line deployment until you reach the stage where you need fiber to the home at the end of the day. So that should make things a lot easier for many of the members that we have. But in the end, when you add all of these things up, and the IP transit costs that we add on at the end of the day as well, is access and connectivity into the Pacific is still relatively much more expensive than other parts of the world. I know in Australia, quite often in many discussions, and in Asia, there's discussions about the cost of bandwidth being high. Well, the cost of bandwidth in the Pacific, even with the deployments that we're seeing today, are still at least an order of magnitude higher than what we're seeing in Australia and New Zealand and in Asia, where the argument is that the price of access is still high, the price of bandwidth is still high. So our challenges are slightly more multiplied. The other area that we're seeing some developments in is on the IXP front, the Internet Exchange Points. We're seeing some developments now in a few countries, although the business model has still to be worked out. It still is a challenge in terms of working out where you host an exchange point, what sort of content you host, and the economics of that versus either the cable or the satellite you have to haul it over to make sense. So from a latency viewpoint, it makes good sense, but if you're still paying for even low orbit satellites or cable, and your prices are still high, economically it still might not make sense. So from a performance perspective, it works out, but from an economic perspective, consumers might still not see the need to pay those prices to justify the services they get. The other thing we see on the policy and regulation front is many of the markets now are starting to liberalize their services. So in many of where PETA members come from, the ISP markets are actually liberalized, and anyone can go and provide services out there. But a number of countries also have started building on their digital policies or their internet policies, and we're seeing governments getting involved in government services, getting government services online to their citizens. So that is a good start. But one of the challenges we have at the moment is around cybersecurity. As the amount of bandwidth that consumers get increases, so does the cyber threats that arrive at their doorsteps. One of the initiatives that PETA has worked with the University of the South Pacific and the officials of the countries that are members of the USP was looking at the formation of what was called PACCERT, the Pacific CERT, to aid the development of countries and other members in developing their own CERTs. Unfortunately, one of the things that USP has reported is, while people recognize the importance of dealing with security issues, the sustainability of the organization of PACCERT is at risk. The key question is, people aren't seeing the actual benefits, or they aren't seeing the threats to justify supporting the work of the organization. So that's an area we'd like to see an improvement in, and possibly seeing how we can work out a sustainable solution going forward. It might be getting awareness or getting some services out so people can actually recognize what cyber threats they are facing, and why it's important to address these things as the Pacific countries get more and more broadband out there. The last area I'd like to cover briefly is roughly around not the networking layers, but I think particularly around the internet and mobile applications ecosystem. So this is the higher, possibly what we say are the application layers. While we see the modernization of networks and a lot of abstraction away from services now being embedded in hardware, and the theory or the concept is that should liberalize even small players to start developing their own services and capturing value from products and services they put in the market. The reality is for small operators, for small ISPs, it's an ecosystem that's very hard to get access into. Even if you get access into this, the marketplaces are quite often quite restricting if you don't have the capacity to build your own marketplaces. So for example, in the Pacific, there isn't a lot of distribution of credit cards or electronic commerce means. Many of the marketplaces that you have access to, for example, the Apple Store, will not accept Fiji credit cards. They will not accept Pacific Island credit cards. And the only option that consumers in these markets have to accessing products and services on these marketplaces are getting someone to buy the Apple cards from Australia or the US and registering the users there and then transferring the cards back for people to buy. So it's not a very efficient way of getting things done. And in many cases, if you're a developer in the Pacific, you can't get past the credentials actually to start developing applications in these marketplaces. So we recognize it might be a quality issue that has to be addressed, but for many small players, it's very restricting in terms of getting access to those markets. So for me, those are the three main issues I think from Peter's side we'd like to communicate. But one of the things, we recognize that, for example, APNIC is the opportunity to talk to people, to share our experiences, our challenges, and look for solutions to move forward. As you originally know, that APNIC 38 was scheduled to be in the Pacific. I guess Brisbane is close enough. But from the Pacific, we would really, really like to have an APNIC meeting actually in one of the Pacific Island countries. So while you're here, please enjoy APNIC 38, but we will put in a bid, one of our members will put in, and we'd like to welcome you all back to the Pacific in the near future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Yvonne, for sharing with us about PETA and some of the challenges you're facing and the initiatives. Now, before I invite the keynote speakers onto the stage, we have a little performance. I'd like to introduce the Viridi Bindi Dev performers who will perform a traditional Aboriginal dance for us.
Nangola Mariinda. My name is Adrian Boragaba. I come from the Wanganjaga people. Our language is a Wiri language. While we're on someone else's country, we like to pay respect to the people from this area here, and they are the Turrbal people. We acknowledge them as the traditional owners, and we acknowledge their law that dates back to time immemorial, the first people from this area. And we acknowledge the past and present elders and all non-Indigenous people. We are the Wiri Binbi dancers. Wiri is our language, and Binbi is good people. So we would like to perform a couple of dances for you. This first one here, this is about law, and we're walking in our law, and it describes who we are as the first people from the land. Jingle bella bello. Bala jingle bella bello. Bala jingle bella bello. Bala jingle bella bello. Ayo da ya da yo da ya da yo da ya. Bala jingle bella bello. Bala jingle bella bello. Bala jingle bala bala, ayo the ya the yo the ya the yo the ya. Ah, go 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 go. Thank you very much. How we dance is, women have a different kind of dance than the men. The women are performing like a gathering thing, description, and the men, we dance like we imitate nature of the butterfly. That's the nature of the butterfly, to shake their legs. Well, we imitate the butterfly as it shakes its wings. So this song here is about us as a people. When we speak and we identify ourselves to other Aboriginal people and other nations, we say, Dene Yorubaya, Wurdi Yerekaba. That means stand and be strong, you people of the Wurdi speaking nation. For our law is the native bee, which we call Kaba. So we protect that bee, and that's our law. Because we also are from the bottle tree people. Our totem of the wood, the tree, is bottle tree, which is Babinbara. That's what this song's about. Stand and be strong, you people of the Wurdi speaking nation, for our totem and our law is in the land. Okay, thank you very much. We also have a story about the rainbow serpent. It's like a creation story, how all things came into being. Like in most Aboriginal stories, we don't really have a story like about God or whatever like that, but God is like really everywhere, all over the place, all the universe, all the earth, everywhere. It's in within all living creatures and all living beings. That's when we look at the land, we look at those things, that how things came about. This is about the rainbow serpent and how everything came into being. The rainbow serpent, in our language, is called Mundinjara, which is rainbow. And how it formed was when the sun first appeared, which is the curry, and then the rain fell, and there appeared a rainbow, which is called Mundinjara. And the water is called Kamo Kamo. That's the water. This is the song about the rainbow serpent. Thank you very much. And the instrument you hear my son playing here is called a didgeridoo. Originally it comes from right up the top end from the Eastern Arnhem Land people. They call it the Yidaki or the Yiriki, but everybody else just calls it didgeridoo. They hold a dreaming to that instrument and the lore that's associated with that. So we now use it as a part of our culture because it's a progressive culture. As we learn from other people, it's like hearsay and fact. So that's what that instrument is there, the didgeridoo. We'd like to finish off with this one here. This is about when we are told about how to survive off the land. take what you need and leave the rest. And just that's how we are as the first people. We're the custodians of the land. We're the ones responsible for the water, the animals, to keep it balanced in the ecosystem. And that was our role, and that's what our position is still today. So this is about hunting and gathering. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That completes our presentation. Hope you enjoyed that presentation there. And we're the Wurdi Binbee dancers from Central Queensland. We belong to the great river there, the Balianda River. And we also, we have connection here too with the Turrbal people. And because I was born here, my father, great-grandfather, and his father, they all come from out in Central Queensland there. So all Aboriginal people, we have a connection because we have a marriage system, and that's been very intricate and carried out for thousands of years within Australia. So that's how we all connected. So our law and custom is similar. We all tell a story about the rainbow serpent. It's a universal story, and we all know and acknowledge that the land is the key to our survival. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Watamuli.
Thank you very much, Wurdi Binbee dancers, for that wonderful performance. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my great pleasure to invite the Honourable Minister Malcolm Turnbull, Minister for Communications, to the stage for his keynote speech. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here among you, and though that's a very, very hard act to follow, I have to say. I don't think I can compete with that. But I've already been getting some guidance from Deputy Secretary Zhao Hulin, who's persuaded me to take off my tie and my jacket. You see, people think that Australians, politicians are informal, but clearly we're not informal enough. But it's good to be here in Brisbane. It's great particularly to be among so many internet governance and internet experts from all around the region. And of course, thank you to APNIC. You're a highly respected multi-stakeholder organisation, and the Australian government greatly values the contribution you make to connecting the region. And we heard very soundly from Ivan, Fong, and of course from Philippe and Jean-Francois about the very different challenges in their respective parts of the Pacific. And Ivan, I was very taken by noted very carefully the remarks you made about payment, these practical obstacles that we tend to think a lot about, satellites and wireless and subsea cables and so forth, and there's got some very practical issues that we should speak some more about. Now, I want to just observe that there is no institution or infrastructure more important to the future prosperity and freedom of our world than the internet. We're on the verge of a world in which most people not only those in the developed world, as well as an innumerable number of things, everything from tiny devices to important devices like fridges and toasters are connected to the internet. While the internet had its origins with the research programs of the US Department of Defense, which led to the APNIC, the internet has grown almost entirely without the direction or control of any government. And this lack of government control or ownership is, in my view, the very source of the internet's freedom and influence. The internet could not and would not have become what it is beneath the heavy hand of government. It has evolved so brilliantly because of that lack of centralised control, not despite it. And that is something to be treasured and protected. Certain characteristics have been, are, and will be essential to the internet's past, present and future success as a platform for advancing the economic and social well-being of all of its users, the whole global community. These include an open and inclusive process for developing globally interoperable internet protocols and standards, the impartial stewardship of internet naming and addressing resources, and the decentralised cooperation and collaboration of network operators around the globe, including through bottom-up, community-led policy development processes such as those used by APNIC. It is these characteristics that have led to the internet becoming a globally interoperable network. Global interoperability and interconnection is absolutely essential for the benefits of the internet to be universally available. Today, the internet is at something of a watershed moment, with world attention focused on its governance, as certain groups, governments or otherwise, seek to challenge the prevailing internet governance orthodoxy, seek to challenge the status quo. When people talk about internet governance, they can mean a very broad range of things, including public policy matters, such as security, privacy and access, as well as the administration of the technical protocols that underpin the internet's infrastructure. The debate around these issues can get confused. It's important to distinguish between governance of the internet, the all-important plumbing, including the underpinning technical protocols and addressing systems, and governance on the internet, which might be understood as to how people use the internet and perhaps even more so the content on the internet. The issue of governance on the internet is important. It has a domestic dimension, which can be seen here in Australia, for example, in the debates about what to do with respect to online piracy or the online safety of children. It also has an international dimension, as states grapple with cyber espionage and online copyright infringement. But when I talk about internet governance, I'm not referring to this, I'm referring to the governance of the internet, how to make sure that the plumbing keeps working and remains interconnected, something in which APNIC and all of you here today are vitally interested. And in case anybody's offended by my referring to this as plumbing, just consider the relative prosperity of yourself and your plumber. As you all know, this has come to a head as the international internet community has been asked to work through the implications of the US government's announcement that it will transition its oversight of key internet functions to the global multi-stakeholder community. The nature of the internet does raise significant policy challenges for governments, cross-border jurisdictional issues and conflicts between competing interests in common naming and numbering resources. It's almost enough to drive you to drink, you might think. So that was a slow pickup there. And the process of resolving those public policy processes which operate outside of government has drawn attention to and put pressure on the multi-stakeholder model of governance. The Australian government is committed to freedom both on and off the internet. We consider this objective is best served by having a strong multi-stakeholder framework such that the governance of the internet is not in the hands of any one group, including any one government or organisation of governments. Of course, there is the need for an appropriate role for governments, but this shouldn't be one of control. Multi-stakeholder arrangements have underpinned the success of the internet, and they've encouraged economic growth and innovation by maximising access. Anyone, anywhere can invent new applications, develop content, create hardware or other standard-based technology and connect it with the global network. And we're a strong supporter of this model. Governance of the internet is discussed in a number of global forums, a very large number, ICANN, ISOC and the IGF, and positions put forward in these forums set the technical and policy framework for the stable and effective operation of the global internet. A key challenge facing the international community is how to evolve these key internet governance organisations without losing their multi-stakeholder and community-led character. This has been a busy time for internet governance in 2014. We started off the year with the announcement in January of a new independent Global Commission on Internet Governance, a collaboration between two think tanks, the Canadian Centre for International Governance and Innovation and Britain's Chatham House. There was also the Net Mundial meeting in Brazil in April, considered by most participants, including the representatives of my department, as being broadly a success. The outcome statement from Net Mundial places a far more equal emphasis on the role of all stakeholders in the internet governance landscape than some earlier statements. As such, it represents an important recognition of the success of the multi-stakeholder model, and it will, I hope, help to shift the conversation away from the old dualistic multi-stakeholder versus multilateral debates. More recently, on the 28th of August, the World Economic Forum, supported by ICANN, convened a group of leaders from government, business, civil society and academia to meet in Geneva to discuss follow-up actions from Net Mundial. That provided an opportunity for valuable discussion, which is continuing. And of course, very recently, from the 2nd to the 5th of September, we had the Global Internet Governance Forum in Istanbul. I understand that meeting was also a success, and many stakeholders are seeking ways to strengthen and improve the forum while retaining its fundamental status as a mechanism for the exchange and development of ideas. Now, in the midst of all of this and a lot more activity, the United States government announced that it intends to transition key internet functions to the global multi-stakeholder community. The Australian government, like the rest of the multi-stakeholder community, welcomed this announcement. In many respects, it's a reflection of the community's maturity and the governance structures and processes that have developed and continue to develop. Unfortunately, some people see this as an opportunity to increase their own power within the model and fundamentally to change the very nature of the systems that have led to the internet we know today. We believe that keeping the technical architecture and administration of global cyberspace free of government domination or control is one of the key global strategic issues of our time. The central contractual role of the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, the NTIA, part of the Department of Commerce in Washington, in the management of the IANA function, has in practice amounted to the retention of no more than reserve powers. In purely technical terms, it's a role that has been a rubber stamp between the policy and implementation mechanisms encoded elsewhere within the system. The US government's role has been variously described as having given ICANN its initial legitimacy, or as being the adult in the room, or it has been described, and I've done this myself, as being rather like the House of Lords was described in the Gilbert and Sullivan opera Iolanthe, as having done nothing in particular but done it very well. However, it's clear enough that ICANN and the global internet community from which it's drawn has a legitimacy drawn from achievement and performance. And it's also clear that everyone in the room is now an adult, even assuming that at one point it was fair to assume that some at least were not. I know there's been a lot of discussion in parts of the community about the process for developing the IANA transition proposal and the various governance structures that ICANN has set up to facilitate this. They're complicated and still under debate. I can understand the challenge and sensitivity of getting this right to avoid distorting future outcomes or unintentionally marginalising parts of the community. We support ICANN's bottom-up approach being carried through so that all internet stakeholders are involved in the development of the solution. That will help to ensure the end result is workable and sustainable, and that it serves the public interest. But we do not want to replace the US government's oversight role with a new and overly burdensome administrative body. We should also consider very carefully any proposals that recommend new arrangements where none currently exist, and equally where there's no apparent need. In terms of specific outcomes, like much of the internet community, we've been considering the current governance arrangements for each IANA function, how they would be affected by the US government's announcement and how they could be improved. For the numbering function, the regional internet registries set the policy for global and regional distribution of internet addresses, and IANA plays a role in distributing addresses in accordance with these policies. Under the existing arrangements, the US government has no special role in the allocation of IP addresses. As they are working well, I'm not aware of any need to make drastic changes to how the numbering function is administered. Instead, we would support the multi-stakeholder community making a thorough assessment of the current arrangements with a view to making any measured and necessary improvements to their operation. Of course, you are the experts on this with first-hand knowledge of the current arrangements, and my department and I would welcome discussion with you, continuing discussion with you on this. Similarly, for the protocol function, the Internet Engineering Task Force has an arrangement with IANA to manage the protocol parameters registry. The US government does not have any direct involvement in the day-to-day operation of this function either, and I'm not aware of any reason to make any major changes or to add unnecessary administrative burdens. The naming function, however, does require more thought, particularly because of the sensitivities about the role of governments and the management of their country code top-level domains, or CCTLD, such as .au or .nz. In effect, there's currently no commonly agreed policy for handling requests to delegate or redelegate a CCTLD. This means that IANA could make these kinds of decisions without any clear policy to guide its action. While this problem exists today, the IANA transition has placed a spotlight on this lack of certainty, and it's not yet clear how it would be resolved. The country code community is aware of this, and it's something that's been doing a lot of work on recently through its Framework of Interpretation Working Group. ICANN's Government Advisory Committee, the GAC, has been working closely with them on this issue, and I understand there'll be further discussion on this at the next ICANN meeting in Los Angeles. It's important that we don't shy away from the complexity of the issue and the sensitivity of seeking to codify an appropriate role for governments in relation to CCTLDs. I expect that this will be one of the most challenging issues raised by the IANA transition process. In addition to the IANA transition process, ICANN has launched a separate but parallel one to consider how it should remain accountable in the absence of its historical relationship with the US government. It will be important for the community to manage this challenge and ensure that whatever happens next, ICANN is inclusive, responsible to all stakeholders, and is not able to be captured by any one interest group, including governments. A number of stakeholders would like to see a greater role for the International Telecommunication Union in managing critical internet resources and international internet public policy decision-making. The Australian government has always enjoyed a strong collaborative and cooperative relationship with the ITU. We are very strong supporters of its work in developing the technical standards that enable seamless global communications and interoperability. It also has a key role to play in capacity-building activities that help developing countries realise the benefits of the digital economy. But as I've said, we remain firm supporters of the multi-stakeholder governance of the Internet. The future evolution of the Internet is a global issue, and responding to challenges like the IANA transition and the broader evolution of the multi-stakeholder model requires a global effort. In many ways, it's bigger than all of us. The Australian government is working closely with a range of Australian and international stakeholders to discuss and develop positions and proposals during this critical period. In particular, my department, represented here today, is seeking to work closely with Australian stakeholders and I met with some of you last week in my office in Sydney to discuss these issues. I look forward to continuing these discussions, and I encourage you to contact the department if you want to become involved. The internet, my friends, is the most remarkable piece of infrastructure ever created by mankind. It has not just changed our economies, our societies, it has changed us. Before too long, most people in the world will be connected to each other and to most of the accumulated knowledge and wisdom of mankind 24 hours a day. The internet has grown up without government direction or control in a state of freedom and with little or no regulation. This is not to say that laws do not extend to the internet. Crimes online are still crimes. The perpetrators may be harder to catch, but they are still breaking the law. Whether it is protecting children from exploitation and bullying, protecting investors from fraud or communities from terrorism, there is always going to be an important role for governments to ensure their laws extend to online activities, the content on the internet. But that does not mean governments should seek to control the internet itself. The internet community, the unfortunately and clumsily named multi-stakeholder system, has created, maintained and developed the internet. It should be trusted to continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your speech and for the support you extended to the present internet numbering and internet governance model. If I may repeat your words or use your words, thanks for your presence at the Plumbers Internet Conference. It's my honor now to invite our next keynote speaker, Mr. Haolin Zhao, Deputy Secretary General of the ITU, to the stage. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Honorable Minister just give us a very, very important message of what he think about the internet governance issues, and he invited us some differences between different opinions and understandings. I think that his message is very clear and very important for our planet, for the future debate. So IT will take very good note of this, and I think that we will be able to move ahead with his guidance, as he just expressed here. So, ladies and gentlemen, our Honorable Minister started by thanking, that invitation, and also talk about he accepted my guidance to take off ties. But I can tell you, it's not my guidance. I very much like to thank him for the recognition of this important protocol. But it's Paul Wilson who guided us. And I visited APNIC this morning, and I asked him whether I should wear tie or not. And then he, in such a way, said, perfect. You just go like that. I can assure you, I have 2 jackets and 4 ties in my room. But anyhow, it's a great pleasure to be here. And also, it's wonderful to be with you this afternoon. And we don't need to really follow ITU's protocols when we started with thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman sometimes cause trouble because his ladies there, he cannot call Mr. Chairman. Then someone like a U.S. delegate will say, no, you should not call Mr. Chairman, you should call the Madam Chairman. And Madam Chairman is not correct, you should call Madam Chairwoman. And the Chairwoman sometimes also challenged by a British expert that the Chairman is a neutral word. You should not use the Chairwoman. Then we don't know what to do with the chair lady or chair. But it's very complicated. But here it's very simple. We don't say anything. That's great. And I like this kind of environment. But also, as our Honorable Minister just said, as politicians, he can follow guidance from you to take off his tie without any problems. But the IT officials can do the same thing. So we are Honorable Minister and IT officials, we are all normal normal human beings like you. So sometimes you heard some bad words about politicians or bad words about the IT officials. Please don't believe that. You see the good example today, our Honorable Minister and myself, that we are just as simple like you. So ladies and gentlemen, let me start my speech. I have a very thick document to read, but don't worry too much. I will read it very fast to meet the 20 minutes time limit. So it's a really great pleasure to be here with you this afternoon in this beautiful city, Brisbane, for this opening of APNIC 38. I'd like to express my gratitude to the Australian government for hosting this meeting in Australia, because I need a visa, so Australian government have to give me a visa. But I did have problem at the Singapore airport, because Australia government want to introduce a non-paper visa, so did not put the visa on my passport. Then at the Singapore airport, it took me 1 hour to wait for their clearance. That finally they said, okay, we cannot verify, just let you go. You may be rejected. But when I came to Brisbane, landed here, in 2 minutes, the customs officer said that, I said, oh, I don't have visa here. What is the matter? No, you don't need a visa. I found your name. Everything is there on the screen, so you go. Very quick, no 3 seconds, So that is great. So I have to thank Australian government, but also I have to acknowledge with appreciation the work of APNIC to organize this one, and the Director Secretary General of APNIC, my dear friend Paul Wilson, to invite me to join you. And of course, I noted that this meeting is supposed to be in New Caledonia. Sorry about that. We missed the opportunity to visit you, but that gives me opportunity to attend the first time our APNIC meetings in Brisbane, where the APNIC headquarters is. You know that over the last 2 decades, I visited a lot of IRs, including 2 times LATNIC, ARIN, RIPE NCC, and last one is APNIC in Mauritius. But I confirmed to Paul this morning, I did not visit that headquarters Africa there, because there's no major big building like APNIC Tower. It's not like LATNIC, you have internet, Casa Internet. So that one is not that kind of place, but anyhow, the representative of Africa came to see me in Mauritius, that we have a headquarters here, but since time is very limited, we cannot invite you to see our offices. So this morning I went to APNIC building. I found the offices of Paul Wilson and the others. That is, it seems to be there's no offices there. Everybody is here at the same corner. That is great. Let me also take this opportunity to congratulate Minister Malcolm Turnbull for his continued commitment to the ICT development in Australia, in the region, and in the world. I think that his presence here at this APNIC 38 shows his attachment to this organization's activities. And I noted from introduction that he's a co-founder of a large ISP here. Now he's minister. So his message for the future of internet governance, for the internet development, I think that's absolutely important for us. And we should not only think about this is from a minister, but this is from Minister of Australia. That also makes difference. I don't want to identify some kind of difference between Minister from Australia and the others, but anyhow, from my side, I consider it's absolutely important to get a message from our Minister of Australia. And just to keep in mind that he was co-founder of a large ISP in Australia. So that, I think, gives us a very heavy weight of his messages. So, distinguished colleagues, 2 weeks ago, I addressed the multi-stakeholder community in Istanbul at the opening of this year's IGF. That meeting was a little bit special for me, because I did not come to any internet-related community meetings over the last 8 years. And this time it's supposed to be Secretary General, Dr. Amanatue, to be there, but he was very busy with our Pacific Island issues, so that he asked me to go. So I went there. But I was told that I only had 5 minutes to speak. And my staff gave me 15 minutes to speak. So that it was terrible for me. So it took me 1 hour in the evening to try to cut my speech. But in the end, I successfully cut my speech. And here, I asked the chairman last night how long I have time to speak. 5 minutes or not? If 5 minutes, I have to cut my speech as well. But he said, no, take your time. You have 20 minutes tomorrow. So that gives me a very good encouragement that I can read my text. I don't need to cut. But anyhow, I conveyed the message of continued collaboration and cooperation with our partners in the internet community. And I was pleased to see that my message was greeted enthusiastically and was widely appreciated. And during that IGF, I made a speech in the opening session, but after that I was very busy to receive a different group of people. I received the chair of ICANN, chair of ISOC, chair of IETF, and many IRs. But I heard that Paul Wilson was there, but I did not see him. And he confirmed to me that he did come to that meeting, and because he considered this is our common region, so he does not want to talk to me. And I should understand the feeling of APNIC myself. But I heard this morning from some of our speakers, even from our chairman, from representative of New Caledonia, that our voices are not very strong at the international platform. So I also agree with those statements that we have to increase. So that Paul Wilson was not 100% correct, and I think that he should try to find me, to talk to me of our concerns, that I can convey those messages when I talk to the other colleagues. But of course, this is my region, it's our region, that I consider myself is better than the other senior officials from ITU, from different regions, to understand our region. But again, in the future, I would like to encourage you to, to contact me, to convey your concerns and your proposals. People consider me relatively new to the internet family. Actually, it's not completely true, because I participated in the first IGF meeting in Athens in 2000. I think that after 2005, we organized the first in 2006 in Athens. I know someone noted that, so that means you know that it's not something, story fabricated. I did participate in that meeting, but after I moved to the Deputy Secretary General position, I did not show up anymore, because in ITU we have 5 elected officials. It's Dr. Amanatue, Secretary General of ITU, plus our directors to show up. I mainly stay at home to assist the Secretary General and other officials to manage our life there. But anyhow, it was really pleased to come back. So I found myself was warmly welcomed at IGF in Istanbul a couple of days ago. So my own personal experiences was over many years has given me very good lessons that there's no substitute to working together. So in my previous role as the director of ITU's Telecommunication Standardization Bureau, TSB, from 1999 to 2006, I enjoyed excellent relationship with other technical bodies, including ICANN, ISOC, and IETF. I don't know whether anybody here noted that I participated at the 45th IETF meeting held in Oslo in July 1999. I don't know whether anybody was there. And it was me who signed the agreement together with IETF, W3C, and ETI to support ICON activities. I had a lot of good contact with all these experts. And I exchanged a mutual visit with the CEO of ICON. When he visited my office in Geneva, I returned my visit to ICON headquarters in California. So that we had a lot of good contact. And with the regional IRs, as I just mentioned, I visited a lot of IRs, and Paul Wilson even criticized me that you are from our region, you have not got the chance to visit our APNIC. So anyhow, this morning, to satisfy him, I went to visit APNIC, and it's a real pleasure to see the APNIC. We have APNIC Tower. That's great. And the environment is really very friendly and very good. I think that the open office of our staff there and give people a very, very good feeling of a family. So I think that the ITU has always enjoyed a fruitful and collaborative relation with our partners. Indeed, 4 of 5 IRs now already become ITU sector members, and started with APNIC. I understood Paul was under pressure that when he decided to join ITU as sector members, and someone told him that it's something he should not do, because someone considered to join ITU is a disaster. And he considered that is a correct action. So, but anyhow, I think that his action later on appreciated by his colleagues there. So I'm very pleased to see this development. That was, I think, back in 2003, and APNIC joined ITU. And I met with Paul Wilson, some even time earlier, and we went to Chinese IPv6 forum 2 times or 3 times in 2003 and 2005, and we had a lot of contact at different places. I have known Paul personally for many years. I really appreciate very much his personality and his leadership of APNIC. And APNIC, compared with the other IRs, I also like to share with you my feelings. That ARIN is regional IRs, but actually that region only have 2 countries, US and Canada. It's not very difficult for them to run their life. And we also have RIPE NCC from Europe, many countries in Europe. But anyhow, in Europe, we have a European Union. Politically, they can coordinate at a high level to address the common issues they're concerned. But APNIC, we do not have Asia-Pacific Union at the political level to coordinate our members in the region. Therefore, APNIC has to find its own way to convince industry, to convince the government to deploy the internet connections, and then to address all those technical, operational, but more importantly also political matters. So that to achieve this situation up to date, I think that we really have to appreciate Paul Wilson's personal leadership and APNIC's enormous effort to help our region to develop internet. So that is a good message I always carried with me. When I met with LATNIC, I told them that maybe LATNIC, you will have to learn from Paul, because in Latin America, in America region, we don't have this kind of political platform to address very important political matter. And APNIC is the latest IRs, but LATNIC is in difficulties, but Africa is not that kind of so difficult because we in Africa we have Africa Union. So Africa Union can help to, to work with APNIC to address those important issues. So this is what I found very, very pleasant to work with Paul Wilson over the last almost 20 years. And I'm very happy that the relationship between our two organizations has continued to flourish over the years. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we enter the era of pervasive computing, we are more and more of our everyday devices get interconnected through IP networks, and new ones are being added at a rapid pace. The need for appropriate infrastructure to support the next generation of applications and services becomes all the more urgent. This is particularly true in the Asia-Pacific region, where most of the future internet growth will happen because we have largest population here. To connect everybody here, that is naturally, we need to develop our infrastructure. As we work towards connecting not just the remaining 4.3 billion people currently offline, but the tens or even more, even hundreds of billions of devices which will make up the Internet of Things. This is not just about the connectivity for connectivity's sake. It is about leveraging the extraordinary benefits of the connected world in terms of education, healthcare, transportation, and so much more for all the world's people, and not just those in the world's richest countries. We can only achieve these goals through the development and deployment of adequate infrastructure, including broadband infrastructure, as well as the provisions of ample addressing resources. At ITU, we have been very firmly focused on broadband in particular across all three of our sectors, as well as through the Broadband Commission for Digital Development, which was set up by ITU together with UNESCO in 2010 to advocate for increased broadband access and rollout in all countries. ITU's membership also recognizes the importance of addressing resources and that the rapid adoption of IPv6 is necessary for the continued development of the Internet, and has put significant emphasis on facilitating the transition to and encouraging the deployment of IPv6. May be interesting for you to note, when I was director of TSP, I was invited by ISOC England, ISOC UK to go to London to promote IPv6. And I was told by the ISOC UK that the UK administration seems not very interested in IPv6. That was, quite a long time ago, 10 years ago. And they want to bring me there to convince their government officials to develop IPv6 transition plan. But then to their disappointment, I was director of TSP. There was no single official from Ofcom to join that meeting. So that said, that is somehow discouraging to see this kind of things. But I think that is partly their fault, because they invited me. They did not really inform Ofcom properly that I'm coming, and we are talking about IPv6. But that is something just want to show you that in some countries, administrations may not consider IPv6 that urgent. But ITU, we did put IPv6 quite urgent, that we encourage our members to deploy the new IPv6 networks. and especially in the developing and the least developing countries. This is evidenced by the various resolutions adopted by members at ITU's Plenipotentiary Conference. The earliest one was 1998. We have a very famous resolution, 103, 101. As well as at our 4-yearly World Standardization and Development Conferences. At ITU's World Telecommunication ICT Policy Forum last year, 2 of the 6 opinions adopted by consensus by the multi-stakeholder community concerning IPv6. That is also very significant. And you have heard that ITU families once had a program at this World Conference for International Telecommunication, we call it WICIT, 2012, which was held in Dubai, December 2012. And that meeting was unfortunately misperceived by someone as ITU would like to take over internet governance. So as we just heard from our Honorable Minister, that the internet governance is not a very simple issue. And indeed, the ITU Secretary General Dr. Amanatue repeatedly saying that the ITU does not have a plan to take over internet governance. But still, that was misinterpreted, misguided, that ITU will talk about internet governance issues and try to take over. So we had some difficulties there, and there's some divisions. But I was very pleased to see that just a couple of months later, ITU did organize World Telecom Policy Forum, particularly for internet governance. And we did not have that kind of tension at all. And we followed, as our Honorable Minister just emphasized, we followed multi-stakeholder approach. And finally, we reached some kind of agreement among all stakeholders through that approach. And there was no tension at all. And those output, 2 of the 6 opinions adopted by consensus by this multi-stakeholder community concerning IPv6, with 1 on IPv6 adoption and another one on capacity building for the deployment of IPv6. So distinguished delegates, participants, concerning both infrastructure and addressing issues, we still have quite significant work laying ahead of us. And as always, we need to work together. And I'm confident in this regard that as a close cooperation between ITU and APNIC in the Asia-Pacific region will continue in capacity building projects and engineering assistance. Since 2011, within the framework of ITU Asia-Pacific Center of Excellences, ITU and APNIC has jointly organized regional training workshops in cooperation with Thailand's Ministry of ICT on IPv4 to IPv6, migration strategies, and IPv6 infrastructure security. And I think that many member states, including the government of Australia, have also offered to support the initiative, and I thank them for their assistance. ITU and APNIC have also been participating in each other's event over the years and sharing our experiences together. As of this year, the cooperation between our 2 organizations has further strengthened through initiatives to support ITU member states directly. The Laos PDR is the first country to have received such joint assistance this year, while Cambodia has also expressed their interest. And we look forward to working together with other interested member states in this area. These are just some examples of the good collaboration. A relationship between our 2 organizations, and we are grateful that in APNIC, ITU has a like-minded partner that is also deeply committed to development and infrastructure. We are also pursuing similar joint efforts in other regions of the world. In May this year, for example, ITU and APNIC established a framework of cooperation to jointly carry out a number of actions aimed at improving the implementation of IPv6 through the provision of technical assistance to Africa countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, as many of you are aware, next month we will be holding our ITU's 19th Plenipotentiary Conference in Busan, Republic of Korea. At this PP14, our member will, among other activities, determine the overall direction and the priorities of the Union for the coming 4 years, and also elect its new management team. As you just heard that from our chairman, that we have to elect all 5 elected officials, no matter whether you are new to the post or you're looking for the second term, you have to submit your candidate for election. So at this moment, I'm the candidate for Secretary General election. And I'm very pleased to also share with you good news that since I get enormous support from Asia-Pacific members, that the other countries, the other regions did not want to challenge our region's candidate. And also, since I get very good support from our APNIC and the other partners in the internet family, so that today I stand still as the only candidate for ITU's Secretary General's positions. So election will be held in Busan in October, very soon, on 23rd of October. We started from 20th, and the first day we will have the election of Secretary General. So it seems to be that the chance to be elected is very high. Yeah. But still not 100% sure. We have to be prepared for worst case. People ask me, what will happen if you will not get, because you are the only candidate, what IT will do? I think that this is the problem of the family, it's not myself. And my wife will like it, because I can stop and then can spend some time with her in the future. But anyhow, I think that to be serious, the chance to be elected seems to be very high. So as we move beyond PP14, I can confidently state that ITU will be even more agile, even more collaborative, and even more inclusive. For the continued growth and development of the Internet in a balanced and inclusive manner, we need to work together to ensure that all nations have access to the necessary infrastructure to support and leverage this growth. And I also like to highlight, it's not on my paper, because I have not heard that message from our Honorable Minister before his speech this morning. And he highlighted importance of a multi-stakeholder approach. I think that ITU, if I'm elected, we would like to follow your guidance and to work together with all stakeholders to discuss the future development of internet services. And ITU would like to play active roles in this such kind of process. But again, I do not believe ITU will be able even to so-called take over internet governance. I don't believe that will be accepted by our members, and I don't think that could be the case. But anyhow, we will work together to look for the good future for all of us. So let us therefore collaborate within our own realms and responsibilities in working towards making that happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that I already reached the time limit of 25 minutes. It's a little bit longer. But anyhow, I really see this excellent opportunity for me to join our members in our own regions to share our opinions, ideas, proposals for the future of internet services that will be enjoyed by all the people in the planet. So I'd like to take this opportunity once again to sincerely thank APNIC, Paul Wilson in person, and also to thank our Honorable Minister for your very, very important messages to guide the future debate and the internet governance and the internet development. So, ladies and gentlemen, I finished my speech, and although it's very, very, very big, I think I read that very fast. So I wish you a very successful meeting, but unfortunately, I will leave tomorrow because I have my suits and ties in my briefcase. I have to go to the next country to give speech for some other conferences, so I will not be able to join you for the rest of this week. But anyhow, I hope this APNIC family will continue their successful efforts to help our own regions to have very good development of ICT and particularly in internet. But also, again, perhaps I should repeat the request from New Caledonia and the chairman of our board that we have to increase our voice at the international platform. We have to really raise our voices to add our value to the international debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zhao, for your interesting speech and taking time to visit our APNIC Secretariat. I'd now like to invite Mr. Paul Wilson, our Director General, for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, everyone, for being here, guests and speakers likewise. One remark about the dress code. I had the rare opportunity or experience today this morning of driving my own car to an APNIC meeting. And I had an unfortunate breakdown in the middle of one of the busiest intersections here. So I had to coast my car through and park on the footpath and grab all my things out of the back and walk to meet my EC by 8 a.m. But the tie that I had was left behind. So you can blame the dress code on the fact that I drive a 1991 Toyota, because otherwise I'd be better dressed and we wouldn't have had this particular topic on the agenda. But I want to say thanks to you all. Thanks also to Songwoman Maruchi and the Wiri Bindi dancers, who I hope you really enjoyed. Thanks in particular to Minister Turnbull and to Mr. Zhao for the thoughts that you both have shared with us today. We are really honoured to have you here. What I really appreciate, however, is not just that you came to speak to this conference, but you've actually shown a real openness to hear from us as well. So I want to thank you for your genuine interest in APNIC, both of you, and in the work that we do. I think, firstly, Minister Turnbull's speech gave us a great deal to think about, and actually a lot to be proud of here, because he speaks of how the internet came to be, and that's a process in which we all have been engaged more or less for a few years or many years. But he also mentioned a lot of work to be done in preserving and evolving the way that we do this work. So just last week I actually joined the meeting that the Minister mentioned in his offices in Sydney, along with a whole range of internet stakeholders from mostly from Australia, and I was there in my capacity as the head of APNIC and as a member of the IANA coordination group, which is working on the transition. So we discussed the issue of the internet stewardship transition, which is the hot topic of today, and we'll have a bit more this week. But what really impressed me about the meeting was both that we had an active interest in this topic from a government minister, which I think is a fairly rare thing to see, but also that in sort of pursuing the topic, he'd invited a whole range of people to the table to discuss views and concerns and to bring their different perspectives. And so the meeting actually gave a really genuine opportunity for authentic sort of communications amongst that group, and it built an understanding amongst all who were there, including the Minister, I think. And he was a very active participant actually in the discussion, I have to say. He showed not only an interest but actually a genuine appreciation of the internet model, and I mean we've seen that very much in the speech today, where he reaffirmed very strongly this model, the thing that we call the multi-stakeholder model that we tend to talk about a lot these days, even though it's a mouthful and not a really beautiful term. So I think this is why the Minister's presence here is really important, and it should actually mean a lot to us. It's a reminder that the technical and political worlds around the internet don't live apart, and it's clear evidence, I think, that both of those worlds are seeing the need to work together, to genuinely work together to address the internet's technical needs, while also considering the public interest, which of course is the government's primary duty. Along with the Minister, we have Hulan Zhao here, and I really am very happy to have you here, Hulan, with us today, showing, I think, an incredible enthusiasm for telecommunications and the internet, and enthusiasm for collaboration with us, with the internet organisations. And I think you've made your intent and your interest very clear, both recently at the IGF meeting and here today. I did, by the way, see you, of course, giving your speech at the IGF, but perhaps I should admit, having tried to avoid you in case it gave you an opportunity not to come here to Brisbane. That I thought if you wanted to bend my ear, then you'd be coming to Brisbane to do so, and so I'm very glad to see you here, and thanks very much. But I mean, what you said is that what you said today is that there's no substitute for working together, and that's been my approach, and I really think it's an approach that's been shared around this community ever since I joined it. That when we took the decision at APNIC to join the ITU as a sector member, it was in that spirit of working together, that there is no point in staying apart, and we've all got plenty of work to do. So in the years to come, I hope, and in fact I'm planning to continue to work with you in your capacity as the new Secretary General of the ITU, which I'm sure we can count on now. In order to help development of the internet, and particularly in the Asia Pacific region, which we both share. I hope we can count on the support of your members in the ITU and the ITU Secretariat in the specific work we need to do. So it's been a priority of APNIC's to spend time helping to build the skills and the capacity in this region to operate the internet as a stable and secure network for the benefit of everyone. especially and specifically in promoting the adoption of IPv6. These things are absolutely essential to the future growth of the internet, and in fact, as we'll hear in this coming week, these activities of APNIC are strongly reinforced by the results of the latest survey that was conducted about APNIC's current and future priorities. So these days, it's very good after so many years and through so many years that that the APNIC community has been going to the ITU. You have finally come to APNIC, and we also tend to meet each other in other places like the IGF, and I think it means that we're part of the same community. We're part of this, I'm sorry for the term again, but this multi-stakeholder community, which is the internet community. So I do welcome your enthusiasm to collaborate and to work together, because there's no substitute for that, and because that feeling is certainly mutual. So, I mean, that's to say there is only one way to achieve the global, open, stable and secure internet. There is only one way for us to address issues like those that we've heard about today already, issues in the Pacific, issues of broadband promotion and what absolutely goes with the deployment of broad-scale broadband, and that is IPv6. And that is by working together alongside each other in our respective roles with respect and understanding. And this goes for all of us. It goes for the technical community, business, government, and all others. Plumbers, for instance, whether you're talking about IP plumbing or H2O plumbing. So again, to both of the distinguished guests here and to everyone here, thanks very much for being here. Thanks to Malcolm and Hulin for your support of the vision that we have, which I hope is the APNIC vision shared by all of us. It means a lot to me. I think it means a lot to us. So thank you again for coming. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks very much for your closing remarks. I would like to invite the audience to once again show your appreciation to all our speakers, the performers, and all our sponsors, as you can see on the banner here, with their generous support for this conference. So I'd like to invite the speakers up on the stage for a group photo, if I may, and then we will break for the afternoon tea. Since we're running a little bit late, we'll break for 15 minutes, and then we come back for our technical keynotes in the next session. Thank you.